Hey, how are you doing? I hope it was a nice day. It's the Eid day over here. It's the Eid Azhar. So let's start the today's farming. Well, after the Germany had got its first blow break from the United Kingdom, the strategic bombing during World War One introduced air attacks intended to deflect to panic civilian targets and made in 1980 to the merger of the British Army and Navy Air Services into the Royal Air Force. Its first Chief of the Air Staff, Hugh Trenchard, was even a military strategist in the 1920s like Leo Tauchet, who saw air warfare as a new way to overcome the bloody stalemate of French warfare. Interception was expected to be nearly impossible, with fighter planes no faster than bombers. Their slogan was that the bomber will always get through, and that the only difference was a deterrent bomber force capable of making retaliation. Predictions were made that a bomber offensive would quickly cause thousands of deaths and civilian hysteria leading to capitulation. However, widespread pacifism following the horrors of the First World War contributed to a reluctance to provide resources. Germany was forbidden a military air force by the 1919 Treaty of Versailles, and therefore aircrew were trained by means of civilian and sport flying. Following a 1923 memorandum, the Deutsche Lufthansa airline developed designs for aircraft such as the Junkers Ju-52, which could carry passengers and freight, but also be readily adapted into a bomber. In 1926, the Secret Leopard fighter pilot school began training German and Soviet Union. Al managed to organize rapid expansion, and following the 1933 Nazi seizure of power, his subordinate Robert Noss formulated a deterrence theory incorporating Jews' ideas and defeats rescuing. This proposed a fleet of heavy bombers to deter a preemptive attack by France and Poland before Germany could fully rearm. In 1933-34 war game indicated a need for fighters and anti-aircraft protection as well as bombers. On 1st March 1935, the Luftwaffe was formally announced with Walter Weber as Chief of Staff. The 1935 Luftwaffe doctrine for conduct of air war, what they said in German Luftkriegführung, set air power within the overall military strategy with critical tasks of containing local forces. Strategic bombing of industries across would be decisive long-term options depending on the opportunity or preparations by the army and navy. It could be used to overcome a stalemate or used when only destruction of the enemy's economy would be conclusive. The list excluded bombing civilians to destroy homes or undermine morale, as that was considered a waste of strategic effort. But the doctrine allowed revenge attacks if German civilians were bombed. A revised doctrine was that destruction of enemy armed forces was of primary importance. The RAF responded to Luftwaffe developments with its 1934 Expansion Plan A, rearmament scheme, and in 1936 it was restructured into Bomber Command, Coastal Command, Training Command, and Fighter Command. The last was under Hugh Dowding, who opposed the doctrine that bombers were unstoppable. The invention of radar at that time could allow early detection, and prototype monoplane fighters were significantly faster. Priorities were disputed, but in December 1937, the minister in charge of defense coordination, Sir Thomas Inskip, sided with Gowding that the role of our air force is not an early knockout blow, but rather was to prevent the Germans from knocking us out, and fighter squadrons were just as necessary as bomber squadrons. The Spanish Civil War (1936 to 1939) gave the Luftwaffe Condor Legion the opportunity to test air fighting tactics with their new aeroplanes. Wolfram von Richthofen became an exponent of air power, providing ground support to other services. The difficulty of accurately hitting targets prompted Buenos Aires to require that all new bombers had to be dive bombers, and led to the development of the Nicky Band system for nighttime navigation. Priority was given to producing large numbers of smaller aeroplanes and planes for long-range four-engine strategic bomber were cancelled. The early stages of the Second World War saw successful German invasions on the continent, aided decisively by the air power of the Luftwaffe, which was able to establish tactical air superiority with great effectiveness. The speed with which German forces defeated most of the defending armies in Norway in early 1940 created a significant critical crisis in Britain. In early May 1914, the Norway debate questioned the fitness for office of the British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain. On 10 May, the same day, Winston Churchill became British Prime Minister. The Germans initiated the Battle of France with an aggressive invasion of French territory. Allied Fighter Command was desperately short of trained pilots and aircraft. Justin sent fighter squadrons, the air component of the British Expeditionary Force, to support operations in France, where the RAF suffered heavy losses. This was despite the objections of its commander David Browning that the diversion of his forces would leave home defences under strain. After the evacuation of British and French soldiers from Dunkirk and the French surrender on 22 June 1940, Hitler mainly focused his energies on the possibility of invading the Soviet Union. He believed that the British, defeated on the continent and without European allies, would quickly come to terms. The Germans were so convinced of an imminent armistice that they